So it's my absolute delight to welcome you, Ben.
Good.
Thank you so much for agreeing to speak. And
thanks, Steve.
Hand over to you. Feel free to hit share screen when you're ready.
Fantastic. I'm going to try and do that now. I had to relocate from the chalet because the internet went down. So I'm now back in the house again. So I hope it all works still. I'm going to try and share my screen. I don't want to do death by PowerPoint, but I think some slides would be helpful. So I'm going to try and share this with you now. Can you all see this? Fantastic. There's a nodding heads. Good. So I'm just going to move to the next one if I can. That's interesting. Okay. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm going up and down here. Right. Okay. So if you can see this slide, what I'm really talking about, and Steve alluded to, is that I feel that health is an interconnected state, and I love this concept of Shalom actually, because it speaks to this integrated health that's not just physical health, but it's spiritual, it's physical, it's social, it's mental. And when I was at university, we were taught the biopsychosocial model, which was rather reductionist and limited to very sort of physical scientific things, and missed out the huge art of including sort of spiritual well-being in health. So you'll see my talk is sort of shot through with kind of much broader concepts. I don't want to bore you with very specific stuff about how you should change your office around too much, or your workplace, but I do want to just salt some ideas about how you could look at your health or the health of your colleagues or your co-workers, and look at some things that may nudge them towards better health and better health habits. So the concept is that health is all interconnected. We have a four-sided pyramid with in layman's terms, well-being, but I would really put spiritual well-being at the top of the pyramid. Then down to the right, we've got the body or the physical area. At the bottom, relationships or social area, and to the left, the mind or mental area. And I'll give you an example of how this works. So let's suppose a chap's had a really bad leg break, and he breaks his leg. It's a physical problem. He's got to rehab. He's got to recover in hospital. He's got operations to do. And so it's quite a physical problem. It's debilitating, and it's a physical issue, but it links to his ability in the social area, because suddenly he is difficult getting around to work. He's difficult getting to work. He's getting blisters from using his crutches. He's not able to get out for lunch at work with the colleagues as easily as he used to, and he's under stress as a result. And then, he also used to love playing football. Suddenly he finds, obviously, he can't play football. So he's not playing the football he used to enjoy and getting the kick out of. He's struggling with work. His leg's hurting. His sleep's poor, so he's under stress. And he also realizes he really misses the social contact he got at the football game with his mates, and having a beer afterwards and a natter, because actually that was just as much for him as the physical. So he's lost doubly in the football area, and he struggles to get down to the pitch to see anybody, and the medicines he's on means he can't have a beer. So his life's just kind of going down the drain because of this leg break, and he starts asking questions. Why me? Why now? What's the purpose when his leg isn't recovering and he loses his job? And so it's just a flavor of how a physical problem can actually, interact with all four areas of health and produce a knock-on effect. And so, as a doctor, I try and look at people and look at all the areas of their health to help understand where the problems are arising from, and where the solutions may come from. And if your pyramid is strong, then it's kind of balanced and equilibrium, and so it's got that good, strong shape. If it's distorted off to one side, then you might get a distortion towards the mental side. The pyramid collapses a bit and loses integrity because one part of your health is suffering. But then it sooner begins to pull the other areas out of line as well. So that's the kind of background that I'm kind of working on, and I developed this at university when I was trying to think through how to add in spiritual health into this sort of very, very sciencey medical course, because I believe that health is just as spiritual as it is physical. And as believers, we believe in the power of the spirit and healing. It is just as relevant as medicine. So I say not one or the other, I say both and. I think if something works, great, let's try it. And so I'm really into trying to sort of balance people's health out. So what might that look like, let's suppose, in the physical realm? we're thinking about sort of your workplace culture, structure, and a very simple thing might be line of sight to water. As humans, we're very driven by basic, kind of basic needs. So actually, we're more likely to drink water if we see it, which is why I try to consult with a glass of water on the table. So if you can see water, you're more likely to think, oh, I'm thirsty. So it's always worth having water around on your desk. So thinking about where the water filter is could be a really helpful change in your office. Might even make a change to well-being on a large scale, because everyone's more hydrated, less crabby, less headaches, more focused. So the structure and the culture is really important, and the government have been doing these things of nudging us towards healthier behaviour. Good example of that is the Cycle to Work scheme. So we're trying to get people to be more active, and they're nudging. So what we find is that people tend to sort of follow their routine behaviours, but actually, if you present them with something else in their vision or in their kind of their cognition, they might choose a better option. So it's really important to try and nudge people towards better behaviour at work. A good example of this I saw in a law firm where they had massive bowls of chocolate and sweets on the tables in the conference rooms. And I went in and I said, oh, what are these here for? And she said, oh, they get months. If we have a meeting, they're all gone. I have to replace them. And one of our clients supplies all these chocolates for us, so we get them for free. And but I sort of thought, well, the health message there is, eat stacks of sugar, fuel the meeting, fine. But what's going to happen after that? They're going to crash. They're going to get, migraine from the chocolate. They're going to get obesity, diabetes, and obesity increases your cancer risk more than smoking. So I was like, you might want to swap this around a bit and just maybe, take the chocolate out of sight and have some healthier options there, so that people could, make a healthier choice, because it was the only option. It was just literally chocolate or coffee. So thinking about what you put in line of sight and in reach of people is really important, and nudging people towards healthier habits in that way can be good. And I apply that to myself. So when I was trying to do a high-fat, low-carb diet, I got rid of all the snacks in our house. Although it's been increasingly hard now. I've got children because they have loads of snacks that I know are there. But generally speaking, what you put in front of you, you're more likely to consume. So it's worth bearing that in mind. We were mentioning this sort of Zoom fatigue thing. Blue light from screens is exceptionally bad for our brains, and so lots of Zooming will result in excess wakefulness, which is a problem for sleep and stresses us out. So it's worth making sure that you don't look at too many blue screens before bed, and don't spend your downtime watching TV or more screens, because that's just as bad. So think about maybe audiobooks, something like that might help. And like you say, this Steve, is the only way we can meet up, which is great, but I'm so looking forward to that sort of face-to-face meeting. In fact, I'm the medical director for 12 prisons around the region, and the first opportunity we had a face-to-face meeting, socially distanced, in a massive room, and it was just so good to do that not on a screen, and we got so much done. And I didn't have that kind of heavy head when I came out of it. So as soon as you can, I'd recommend, don't forget meeting up together, as the good book says. Moving on to kind of screening, it's really important for people to have access to screening and health checks. And I found this really in my GP practice as an NHS doctor. Men would turn up, and Steve, like you said, men were generally pretty rubbish at looking after ourselves or seeking help. Men would come in with a minor problem like a toenail, and then just say leaving, after they've had their 10-minute allocation. As they were walking out the door, they'd just say, oh, doctor, there's just something else. And you're like, oh, no, I'm not got any time. But actually, that was the real thing they came. I'm worried about my prostate, or I think I've got erectile dysfunction, or, my uncle's had a heart attack. Does that mean I've got heart disease? And actually, screening helps identify stuff early and preemptively. So I'm a big fan of screening. Not a tick box exercise, but a very proactive exercise where you go, okay, what are your risks? What tests are relevant? At this age and stage, what should be thinking about, and we try and build a whole plan for someone who comes to the medical for a whole year, so that they get a chance to actually engage with their health for a whole year, and then they can work out where they are they doing well, what are they measuring themselves against, what goals have they got, what to do if things go wrong. So screening, I definitely say, is an important thing. Seeking help early, you've got more chance of catching a problem. if you get it early. And a sort of amazing protection I had, when I was 35, I saw a new mole develop on my leg, and I thought, oh, I don't think I've seen that before. And the next day it was kind of itchy and tingly, and I thought, this is a bit weird. And the next day I was like, I don't have a look at this. So I actually went to the doctor and said, look, I want to get this chopped off my leg, please. And turned out to be a malignant melanoma, which is a very aggressive form of cancer. Now, amazingly, and I'm sure this is God, the week before I'd been on a conference about melanoma diagnosis. So I'd actually, kind of been given the tools to diagnose my own melanoma. I had it chopped out. I then had a much bigger section of my leg chopped out, and I'm here to tell the tale 7 years later. But actually, had I not taken early action, it was already aggressively digging into my leg, and probably would have killed me if I hadn't done anything about it. So seeking help early is really important, and then screening for stuff you don't know about is also important. So in the physical realm, that's about as doctory as it gets. Tests, examination, symptoms. There's much broader stuff that we could think about. And I think in terms of well-being, it's increasing awareness of the gut being a really important thing. Does anyone here take probiotics? Put your hand up if you do. Anything like that? No. So probiotics basically are going to help your gut have the right kind of bacteria. And increasingly, we're realizing that the gut is, as the Greeks thought, it is the seat of everything, not the soul, but all of the kind of the hormones and the immune system comes from the gut. And if your gut is healthy and produces good bacteria, it will be protective, and it will also help you sleep better, have more energy. It will protect you from infection. It will also protect you from depression and cancer and obesity. And if you don't have a healthy gut, it leads to all the wrong things. What's interesting is if you have the wrong bacteria, they crave sugar. The more sugar you eat, the more they grow, and then the more sugar they crave. So you kind of get this vicious cycle. If you get the right bacteria, they crave less sugar and they crave more of the healthy things that you need. So it's always worth thinking about your gut. Looking after your gut. I don't mean beer gut, I mean like your bowels, thinking about the bacteria there. You might take a probiotic capsule, you may take an Actimel or something like that, Yakult. You may eat fermented food, pickles, kimchi, that kind of thing, drink kombucha. All these things can help basically to promote the healthier gut, which is protected. On a food issue as well, we now know that the food we're eating now, if it's sort of standard supermarket food, is about 50% less nutritious than food used to be 50 years ago. Okay, so if you or your grandparents were growing food in allotment, that would have been 50% more nutritious than food is now. It's grown under cover, it's grown artificially, it's refrigerated, it's transported. A lot of that nutritious energy is lost. So one big thing we're really pushing on is vitamin D. Okay, so we're all working indoors, we're living indoors, we're also living north of Oxford, and the light hitting your skin north of Oxford isn't enough to generate enough vitamin D with that wavelength. So basically, you need to take some supplements. Now, you can get vitamin D from food. It's pretty hard to get from food. You'd have to be sort of an Eskimo eating tons of smoked salmon or something like that, which would be a rather expensive habit. So the easiest thing is to supplement. There are other key things we should supplement as well, and they would be probably best covered by a multivitamin, which alongside a healthy diet is going to help you prevent dementia, prevent heart disease, prevent things like diabetes, along with your healthy gut microbiome. So thinking about supplementation, if you're not doing it, definitely should. And we have a question at the end. What action might you take away from this? I'm not going to allow you to take away vitamin D as an action, because that's the default action you have to be doing if you're not actually. So I want you to be taking that anyway. So think about supplementation. Now I'm just picking up some stuff in the chat here as well. Sorry, I should have said questions, of course, important. So please feel free to ask questions. I've got a question here about probiotics can have adverse effects. Absolutely, yes. So it depends how you get them. Thanks, Rosamund, for that question. So if you're taking probiotics in the form of yogurt and you're lactose intolerant, you're going to make your gut worse. So you've got to find it in a way that's suitable to you. It might be that pickles is okay for you, but dairy isn't. It might be that you can drink some fermented kombucha or something like that, and that's okay for you. Or, you might find that taking probiotic, yogurts or drinks might be okay. So there's lots of different ways to get these good bacteria into you. The key thing is that you take some action on that. And that would be a really, really important thing. Nishka, thank you very much. You're selling my clinic already. So basically, yes, it's really important to check what your vitamins are doing before you kind of do anything. It's quite hard to overdose on vitamins, particularly vitamin D. We all need to be more than we're getting, but you don't know how much you need until you do a baseline test. So we do blood tests, and we find that they're very helpful. Most people I find in Birmingham, if they're not taking vitamin D, the vitamins are about 30, it should be about 100, okay? And that's sort of anti-cancer, anti-mental health problems, kind of improves the immune system, improves all sorts of other things. So vitamin D is a big one. So thanks, Nishka, for that. And the key thing is with vitamins is habit stack them. So put them next to something else that you do regularly, like clean your teeth, okay, because you're more likely to do them. And the message from this physical kind of tips is small incremental changes over time will improve health and health habits, okay? So if there's one thing, if your office is already gluten-free, chocolate-free, dairy-free, then you might be heading for some other thing for yourself or for your office. If you're starting with the kind of junk food, start with that. But choose one thing and work on that. And then once you've achieved that sort of that level in yourself or your office or your culture, go for the next thing. Okay. Now I'm just going to decrease the chat there. We've talked about exercise to work. Exercise is really important. The one time you should not be exercising is if you get chronic fatigue or get long COVID. I'm just coming out of long COVID. I caught COVID working in prison in December, and I'm just able to begin to do a little bit more exercise now, 3.5 months in. But normally I'd be running through the woods, 5K 3 times a week. So definitely exercise if you can is really important. 30 minutes every day, getting short of puff. And now it's easy to gauge that, because at any level of fitness, if you're getting out of breath, you're doing enough work. Okay, so whether it's walking, brisk walking, starting somewhere from no activity to walking to brisk walking, maybe as the lockdown allows, jogging, that kind of thing, swimming, team sport, let's hope so. Any other questions on the physical realm coming up? If not, I will continue. I seem to have lost the chat actually, so I'm not quite sure how to get that back, but I'm going to carry on to the next section, which is the mental. Oh, sorry, I'm going too far there. The mental part of these things is increasingly important, and we now know that at least 60% of any physical problem is mental. Okay, so one of the big things fueling the health crisis in the West is a lack of sleep. Now, I have 3 young children, so anyone who's been through that sleep deprivation, I sympathise with you. I'm still trying to claw back 6, 7, 8 hours a night if I can of good sleep. Sleep is so important, not just for physical, but for mental restoration. There's all sorts of things that go on during sleep for your body that are absolutely key. It has to be good quality sleep as well. So you might have 10 hours of sleep opportunity, but get 6 hours of good quality sleep. I said turning off screens is important. Watching out for caffeine is important too. Having a calm, quiet environment to sleep in is really important. And in general, preparing and sort of priming your body for sleep is really important. So if there's one thing coming out of lockdown, I think we're all massively sleep and sort of rest deprived, because we're either stressed out by worrying that we haven't got a job, or we're stressed out by the fact we're having to do 18-hour days, and how am I going to educate the kids when I've got up at 5 a.m, done 3 hours work, and then I've got to homeschool and I'm not a teacher. So these things are massively stressful. So if people aren't getting enough sleep, it may be work culture. Think about your email culture. Think about having a policy where maybe you don't respond to emails after a certain time, or you choose to send emails delayed that will arrive the next morning. So I have a great function on my email where I email my PA in the evening, but it doesn't arrive in her inbox until 8 o'clock the next morning, because I don't want to stress her out overnight. So think about those kind of things. You can be kind to each other in that way. And we know that a lot of people are burning out. I think what we're seeing now at the end of this lockdown period is burnout, and massive burnout across the nation, because everyone is stressed out and holding on by their fingernails. Burnout produces sort of increased anxiety, sort of sleep problems, palpitations, and COVID feeds into that no end, because it produces all the same things, so it makes it 10 times worse. To be productive, we need to make sure that we're getting enough rest and downtime, and recreation is really important. It's a biblical principle, isn't it, that actually we have at least a day of rest, and that isn't a day of service, that's a day of rest. And I'd like to point out that I think that's probably a concept that as Christians we maybe need to think about. I've got a question coming in here about something. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good. So thinking about rest is really important. Coming back to sorry, I just need to go back up one. I seem to not be able to get back up to the mental. Sorry, just see if I can do that. No, I can't. I'm going to essentially for the mental, we have mental health first aid. That's great. The next thing is, what do you do then? And so the key thing is where to find help when. And I think it's really important that if someone's mental health is deteriorating, identification is brilliant, but they actually also then need to see someone who is an expert in that. And that's probably going to be through their GP or through self-referral to counselling. So have a think about that. Have a think about busyness, because we are unconsciously busy, and that means we're not present. Going on to the social, thinking about work culture, you need to belong, and your culture, if you're retaining people, will include things that help them to feel that they belong. Same as belonging to this fellowship is great, belonging to your church community may be great. There's other stats about health that actually, if you are in a relationship, you're more likely to live longer with a supportive partner, but you also have to support that partner for that to work. If you don't, then that effect actually wears off. So think about honouring your family, supporting your partner in this. Community service is a big thing. It actually has lots of well-being built into it. There's something about us that gets a kick out of serving other people, and actually doing something for other people actually increases well-being. So the stacking of these well-being principles might be planting a tree in a green space. So the green space makes you feel good. You're doing it with other people, so there's a social connection, and you're saving the planet at the same time. You're trying to stack the multiples of these things to get the maximum benefit of that time. And forest bathing is one thing I would say is like that, because actually spending intentional time in forests actually improves immunity, improves cancer stats, improves obesity and well-being. So an hour in the forest every month is the final tip there for that. On the last quick one, I know we've not got much time left, but I love this Shalom idea, the sort of holistic state of permanent well-being. I think sometimes we strive, but actually we can't strive to create peace. We have to sit back and let that happen. And actually that's about patience. That's about almost letting go. But part of letting go is also taking on this yoke. Now, we're yoked with Christ. It's a well-fitting yoke, and there are jobs that we have been given that are prepared in advance for us to do. We have to discover those. But actually, if we are yoked to Christ with a well-fitting yoke and we submit to that, we find peace, because actually through him, more can be achieved than ever was imagined or hoped for. So my final sort of tip for Shalom is to try to rest in your work. Don't do things that you're striving for. Ask why you're striving, and look for those things where you feel you have been given a mandate to do this thing. I'm not saying don't work hard, but I'm saying work smart in the areas you feel absolutely called to. And finally, there's lots of evidence to say that praying is good for you, that singing is good for you, that thankfulness and journaling with gratitude is good for your mental health. So if you write down every day something that you're grateful for, you're far more likely to be in good mental health. Now, as a massive whistle stop through an awful lot of health stuff, There's two questions here. I'm just going to see quickly. Yeah, Nushka says, what about the background of yoga and Hinduism? My response to that is the physical part of yoga is the bit that I'm interested in. I sort of talk about yoga and Pilates. I think it's very much about the practitioner and the teacher as to how far you're turning into sort of a spiritual Hinduism, or how far you're doing a physical set of exercises. So whether it's Pilates or yoga, I would say make sure that you trust the teacher who's not leading you down a different spiritual path. That's probably what I'd say. And I have found some of my best times praying have been when I've been doing yoga. I don't see why we can't subversively fulfill a set of exercises to bring them back to the right spiritual overcoming. Now, finally, just to say, so with Dr. Finley's, we do all these kind of health promotion events. We can happily, chat about workplaces. We can do screening and medicals. We're also doing a lot of home visits, which is great, meeting people, and video consultations people can't get in. We work very closely with a psychologist in our practice because we believe that actually that's really important. And in this sort of integrated way, often we find solutions to problems that Western medicine doesn't find, but actually a broader view of medicine, and starting with lifestyle and a functional approach to lifestyle can really help. So I'll leave you with a question, if I can bring that up. So thank you for listening. I'm sorry that's been absolutely sort of whistle-stop tour through health, but what one intervention, you can't have vitamin D, but one intervention would you think about deploying now, either in your own health or for your workforce? I think that's the question we're going to take into the breakout rooms.